The reason why you're not happy with your sex life is because you're confusing sex with intimacy. Now, in this video, I'm going to break down specifically the difference between sex and intimacy. So you guys sit back and we're going to talk about it right now. Now, check this out, right? So sex and intimacy. I want to break this down from a licensed therapist perspective because sometimes we have the two confused. Now, what led me to even talk about this is what I've been noticing. I've been hosting a lot of men's workshops, and I specifically help men build healthier relationships. And one thing that I noticed was that a lot of fellas, like, we're not fulfilled. We're not fulfilled in our sex lives, and most time that's what prompts us to be, cheating or go outside of our marriages or outside of our relationships, or also just not even wanting to commit at all. And what I started to realize was, specifically for us men, we tend to not really know the difference between sex and intimacy. And there is actually a difference, but also there's the common traits as well too. Now let me break down what is sex and what is intimacy. Now, sex is a physical act that you have with somebody else. And usually this act is something that will give you sexual satisfaction. Now, intimacy can be looked at as a way to connect with somebody. Now, this is where the issue lies. I want you guys to pay attention to this one. The issue lies when sex now becomes your way of connecting with somebody. And when you're using sex as a way to connect with somebody, that becomes the problem. Now, there is a level of intimacy that does happen when you do have sex with somebody, because there is the physical intimacy, which physical intimacy can be sex, it can be physical touch, it can be hugs, it can be kisses, but also even in the realm of physical intimacy, sex is not the only way to express physical intimacy. And that's not the only way to connect with somebody on a physical level. Again, you can have physical touch, hugs, kisses, anything that has to do with the physical touch outside of sex. Now, again, the issue is when sex becomes a tool to connect with somebody. And this is where, intimacy is not just sex. You have different and many forms of intimacy. One other form of intimacy is emotional intimacy. So this can be expressing or sharing feelings with one another. This can be having conversations, deep level conversations. This can simply start by having a conversation and asking somebody, hey, how was your day? And you guys know when you have those type of conversations where you're on the phone with somebody for like hours and hours and hours, you probably as a high school, or you probably do it right now, you're on the phone with somebody that you like for 4 or 5 hours. You guys didn't have sex, but that was maybe a very intimate moment because you guys are having a fire conversation. Do understand that emotional intimacy is a form of intimacy that you can practice in your relationships or even in your marriage. And sex is not the only way to express intimacy. The other one I don't think a lot of folks really touch on is creative intimacy. Now, this can be very confusing because it's like, what is creative intimacy? Is this like us, coloring, or is this doing an art project together, or is this, what does that look like, right? Now, creative intimacy can involve, you guys doing an art project and all that stuff together, but it's really simply the exchange of you guys' aspirations, you guys' imaginations, you guys' goals, and the things that you really, really want to get out of your life. And this is, in my opinion, a super important part of intimacy, because this is where you get to really know the person. You don't really get to know somebody by having sex with them. You don't really get to know the ins and outs of the inner workings of their minds. You probably will like, hey, they're good in bed, or she can do all types of tricks or whatever it is, but you don't really get to know the person. You're just using them for that instant gratification, that satisfaction. But the creative intimacy allows you to get to know somebody on a deeper level. It allows you to actually see the person for who they are and see where they're headed. One question you could ask somebody is like, hey, what is your 5-year goal? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Even though that seems like a super cliche question to ask, it's super powerful, because what it does, it allows you to see the person and really see if they have a vision for themselves. See if they have a vision for their lives. Can they see themselves, or where they see themselves in 5 years? Where they see themselves 10 years from now. And part of why this is important as well too is because you want to date somebody, you want to be with somebody and connect with somebody that has a vision or a purpose, that has clarity in what they want to do. And clarity doesn't mean like, hey, they're so structured, like, hey, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this, and by 5 years, I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. It's more so, seeing the vision, like, hey, I wanna open up a business. I may not know how I wanna do it, but I just wanna open it, right? I don't have the steps of doing things, but I know this is something that I wanna do. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to creative intimacy, you have the, successful and unsuccessful. Successful is, usually folks that do something to figure it out later. The unsuccessful is like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to do it and do it later. How many times I'm a witness to this as well too, but how many times have y'all, thought about doing something and didn't take no action? So when you're trying to find somebody to connect with on the intimacy level, again, it doesn't have to be planned out. It doesn't have to be, hey, this is what it is, but you want to have them have at least a thought, a vision or a focus on something or a destination of where they would like to go. And the one that is my personal favorite, I know creative intimacy is super important, but the one that I really enjoy is the spiritual intimacy. Now, spiritual intimacy is allowing yourself to have common beliefs and core beliefs with somebody that you connect with. And I feel like this is super important because the foundation of any relationship or any partnership or whatever it is usually a common belief or a common goal or a common understanding. Now, especially this is super important in relationships because many times there may be some turmoil in the relationship because you guys might not believe the same thing, where it's like not the same spiritual beliefs or not the same beliefs around how to raise children or the same beliefs around family, friends, relationships. But you have to have some kind of foundational core belief. You do have to have a foundational core belief. And this doesn't mean that your relationship isn't going to be successful if you guys don't have, for example, like the same religious preferences. But I will say it can make it a lot more difficult. It can make it a lot more difficult. It's just like with anything. Well, if you're in an interracial relationship, there might be a lot more difficult than dating somebody within, your culture based on your guys' upbringing, your common beliefs, or traditions that you grew up with. As I wrap up this video, I just want to drive home the idea of you can have sex with somebody and be intimate, but don't use sex as the only way to connect with somebody because there's so many other different ways you can connect with somebody because sex is not the only way to express or show intimacy. I appreciate y'all for tapping in. My name is Terrence Stewart. Y'all take care. Peace.